sacred place where we discuss all things of earth and...
Sorry guys, that is a video for something else. So if you liked that, yeah, sorry about that. If you like that, check out the Hallowed Hearth podcast tomorrow night at 9:00. Anyway, hi, it's Wednesday. We are together. And that right there should just tell you everything about this week. It has been, I don't know what's going on. I really don't know what's going on. Thought it was a commercial. Okay, good. It was not. It was the intro to the Hallowed Hearth because I have the wrong video attached to the wrong thing. But this is what happens when you do live stuff. It's kind of why I like it. You never know what's going to happen. And at least it was appropriate. Not that I have inappropriate things on the computer. Oh my God, Katie. Okay, stop. Okay, anyway. Hi. Happy Wednesday. Yeah, so I promised you guys a surprise story last week that we did not have time for. So we're going to read it tonight. And my father has asked if I am going to do the Mark Twain inflection. And maybe. So I'm not sure what is happening. Maybe a little bit of something. Oh, okay. So I just needed to pull this other screen over a little bit because I couldn't see who that was, but it was Kelly. Hi, Kelly. So if you are jumping on right now or have just jumped on, do like Kelly did, get in the chat, say, hey, let me know that you're here. If it is your first time here, hi. Wednesdays are days for short stories, and I love them. We are in month 10 months of this. So that's what, hi. Yeah, that's like 40 weeks. Yeah. We need to count videos, see how many we've actually done. But hi, go ahead, subscribe if you are new here. That way you will get notifications. We do go live every Wednesday at 7:30. I have a second channel where we do Reddit stuffs. I may try to combine those channels, but that's just a thought living in my head right now. So we're going to do 2 stories tonight. The first one is Mark Twain's The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. And then another one that I kind of skimmed over to see if it would be appropriate for us. And it is, it is called The First Day of Spring. Yeah, it's kind of talks about the promise of the first day of spring, which makes really this my favorite time of year. Not so much the last couple of days with this gross whatever snow that's been blowing back through. But like my neighbor's daffodils all popped over the weekend. And so there's just this wash of yellow next door. Yeah, I love the first day of spring. So anyway, that is enough rambling madness from me. Again, when you guys get here, if you're here now, say hey, and I'll say hey back. So we're going to get started with some Mark Twain. Oh, all right. Dad, this is going to be for you for when you watch later. I don't know that I'm going to be able to keep it up, but we're going to try. In compliance with the request of a friend of mine who wrote me from the East, I called on good-natured, garrulous old Simon Wheeler and inquired after my friend's friend, Leonidas W. Smiley, as requested to do. and I hereunto append the result. I have a lurking suspicion that Leonidas W. Smiley is a myth, that my friend never knew such a personage, and that he only conjectured that, if I asked old Wheeler about him, it would remind him of his infamous Jim Smiley. And he would go to work and bore me nearly to death with some infernal reminiscence of him as long and tedious as it should be useless to me. If that was the design, it certainly succeeded. I found Simon Wheeler dozing comfortably by the ballroom stove of the old dilapidated tavern in the ancient mining camp of angels, and I noticed that he was fat and bald-headed, and had an expression of winning gentleness and simplicity upon his tranquil countenance. He rose up and gave me a good day. I told him a friend of mine had commissioned me to make some inquiries about a cherished companion of his boyhood named Leonidas W. Smiley. Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, a young minister of the gospel, who had heard was at one time a resident of Angel's Camp. I added that if Mr. Wheeler could tell me anything about this Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, I would feel under many obligations to him. Simon Wheeler backed me into a corner and blockaded me there with his chair, and then sat me down and reeled off the monotonous narrative which follows this paragraph. He never smiled. He never frowned. He never changed his voice from the gentle flowing key to which he tuned the initial sentence. He never betrayed the slightest suspicion of enthusiasm, but all through the interminable narrative there ran a vein of impressive earnestness and sincerity, which showed me plainly that, so far from his imagining that there was anything ridiculous or funny about his story, he regarded it as a really important matter and admired its two heroes as men of transcendent genius and finesse. To me, the spectacle of a man drifting serenely along through such a queer yarn without ever smiling was exquisitely absurd. As I said before, I asked him to tell me what he knew of Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, and he replied as followed. I let him go on in his own way and never interrupted him once. There was a fella here once by the name of Jim Smiley. In the winter of '49, or maybe it was the spring of '50, I don't recollect exactly, somehow, though. That's what makes me think it was one of the others, because I remember the big flume wasn't finished when he first came to the camp, but anyway, he was the curiousest man, always going about betting on anything that turned up you ever see. He could get anybody to bet on the other side. And if he couldn't, he'd change sides. Anyway, that suited the other man would suit him anyway, just so he's got a bet he was satisfied. Still, he was lucky. Uncommon lucky. He most always came out the winner. He was always ready and laying for a chance. There couldn't be no sultry thing mentioned but that feller'd offer to bet on it. Take any side you please, as I was just telling you. If there was a horse race, you'd find him flush, or you'd find him busted at the end of it. If there was a dog fight, he'd bet on it. If there was a calf fight, he'd bet on it. If there was a chicken fight, he'd bet on it. Why, if there was two birds sitting on a fence, he would bet you which one would fly first, or if there was a camp meeting, he'd be there regular to bet on Parson Walker, which he judged to be the best exhorter about here. So he was too, and a good man. If he even seen a straddle bug start to go anywheres, he'd bet you how long it would take him to get wherever he was going to. And if you took him up, he would follow that straddle bug to Mexico, but what he would find out where he was bound for and how long he was on the road. Lots of the boys here has seen that Smiling, can tell you about him. Why, it never made no difference to him. He would bet on anything, the dangest feller. Parson Walker's wife laid very sick once for a good while. It seemed as if there weren't going to save her, but one morning he come in. Smiley asked how she was, and he said she was considerable better, thank the Lord for his infinite mercy, and coming on so smart that, with the blessing of Providence, she'd get well yet. Smiley, before he thought, says, well, I'll risk 2.5 that she don't anyway. This year, Smiley had a mare the boys called her the 15-minute nag. But that was only in fun, because, of course, she was faster than that. He used to win money on that horse. For all she was so slow and always had asthma or distemper or consumption or something of that kind. They used to give her 200 or 300 yard start and then pass her underway, but always at the fag end of the race, she'd get excited and desperate like and come cavorting and straddling up, scattering her legs about limber, sometimes in the air, sometimes out to one side amongst the fences, and kicking up more dust and raising more racket with her coughing and sneezing and blowing her nose, and always fetch up at the stand just about a neck ahead as near as you could cipher it down. And he had a small little bull pup that to look at him you'd think he wasn't worth a cent, but to sit around and look ornery and lay for a chance to steal something. But as soon as money was up on him, he was a different dog. He'd underjaw begin to stick out like the forecastle of a steamboat, and his teeth would uncover, shine savage like the furnaces. The dog might tackle him and bullyrag him and bite him and throw him over his shoulder 2 or 3 times. Andrew Jackson, which was the name of the pup, Andrew Jackson would never let on but what he was satisfied and hadn't expected nothing else, and the bets being doubled and doubled on the other side all the time till the money was all up. And all of a sudden, he would grab that other dog just by the joint of his hind leg and freeze on it. Not chew, you understand, but only just grip. Hang on till they thronged up the sponge. It was a year. Smiley always come out winner on that pup till he harnessed a dog once that didn't have no hind legs because they'd been sawed off by a circular saw. And when the thing had gone along far enough and the money was all up, come to make a snatch for his pet bolt, you saw in a minute how he'd been imposed on and how the other dog had him in the door, so to speak. And he speared surprised, and then he looked sort of discouraged like and didn't try no more to win a fight. So he got shucked out bad. He gave Smiley a look, as much to say his heart was broke, and it was his fault for putting up a dog that had no hind legs for him to take bolt of, which was his main dependence in a fight. And he limped off a piece and laid down and died. It was a good pup, that Andrew Jackson, and would have made a name for himself if he'd lived, for the stuff was in him. He had genius, I know it. He had no opportunities to speak of. Don't stand to reason that a dog could make such a fight as he could under them circumstances if he had no talent. It always made me feel sorry when I think of that last fight in his, and the way it turned out. Sorry, guys, I'm going to take a drink. Hi, Karen. Hi, Todd. Well, this year Smiley had rat terriers, chicken cocks, and tomcats, and all of them kind of things, till you couldn't rest, and you couldn't fetch nothing for him to bet on, but he'd match you. He kissed a frog one day, took him home, and said he'd calculated to educate him. And he never done nothing for 3 months but sit in his backyard and learn that frog to jump. And you bet he did learn too. He'd give him a little punch behind, and the next minute you'd see that frog whirling in the air like a donut. See him turn around one somerset, maybe a couple if he got a good start, and come down flat-footed and all right, like a cat. Got him up so in the matter of catching flies, and kept him in practice so constant he'd nail a fly every time as far as he could see him. Smiley said all a frog wanted was education. He could do most anything, and I believe him. Why, I've seen him set Daniel Webster down here on this floor. Daniel Webster was the name of the frog, and sing out, "Flies, Daniel, flies!" And quicker than you could wink, he'd spring straight up, snake a fly off on the counter there, and flop down on the floor again as solid as a gob of mud, and fall to scratching the side of his head with his hind foot as indifferent as if he had no idea he'd been doing any more than any frog might do. Never seen a frog so modest and straightforward as he was, for all he was so gifted. And when it come to fair and square jumping on a dead level, he could get over more ground at one straddle than any animal of his breed you ever saw. Jumping on a dead level was his strong suit, you understand, and when it came to that, Smiley would ante up money on him as long as he had a red. Smiley was monstrous proud of his frog, and well he might be, for fellers that had traveled and been everywheres all said he laid over any frog that they ever saw. Well, Smiley kept the beast in a little lattice box. He used to fetch him down sometimes and lay up for a bet. One day, a feller, a stranger in the camp, and he come across him with his box and says, "What might that be that you got in the box?" Smiley says, sort of indifferent like, "It might be a parrot or it might be a canary, maybe, but it ain't. It's only just a frog." And the feller took it and looked at it careful and turned it round this way and that and says, "So 'tis. Well, what's he good for?" "Well," Smiley says, easy and careless, "he's good enough for one thing. I should judge he can outjump any frog in Calaveras County." Feller took the box again and took another long, particular look and gave it back to Smiley and says, very deliberate, "Well, I don't see no pines about that frog that's any better than any other frog." "Maybe you don't," Smiley says. "Maybe you understand frogs and maybe you don't understand them, and maybe you've had experience and maybe you ain't only amateur, as it were. Anyways, I got my opinion, and I'll risk $40 that he can outjump any frog in Calaveras County." Feller studied a minute and then says, kind of sad like, "Well, I'm only a stranger here and I ain't got no frog, but if I had a frog, I'd betcha." Well, Smiley says, "Well, that's all right. That's all right. If you'll hold my box a minute, I'll go and get you a frog." And so the feller took the box and put up his $40 along with Smiley's and sat down to wait. So he sat there a good while thinking to himself. And he got the frog out and prized his mouth open and took a teaspoon and filled him full of quail shot, filled him pretty near up to his chin and set him on the floor. Smiley, he went to the swamp and slopped around in the mud for a long time, and finally he catched a frog and fetched him in and gave him to this feller and says, "Now, if you're ready, set him alongside Dan'l and his forepaws just even with Dan'l, and I'll give the word." Then he says, "1, 2, 3, jump." And him and the feller touched up the frogs from behind, and the new frog hopped off, but Dan'l gave a heave and hoisted up his shoulders so like a Frenchman, but was no use. He couldn't budge. He was planted as solid as an anvil, and he couldn't no more stir than if he was anchored out. Smiley was a good deal surprised, and he was disgusted too, but he didn't have no idea what the matter was, of course. The feller took the money and started away, and when he was going out the door, he sort of jerked his thumb over his shoulders this way at Dan'l and said again, very deliberate, "Well, I don't see no points about that frog that's any better than any other frog." Smiley, he stood scratching his head and looked down at Dan'l a long time, and at last he says, "I do wonder what in the nation that frog throwed off for. I wonder if there ain't something the matter with him. He appears to look mighty baggy somehow." And he catched Daniel up by the nape of the neck and lifted him up and says, "Why, blame my cats if he don't weigh 5 pounds. And turned him upside down, and he belched out a double handful of shot. And then he see how it was, and he was the maddest man. He set the frog down and took out after that feller, but he never catched him. And here Simon Wheeler heard his name called out from the front yard and got up to see what was wanted. And turning to me as he moved away, he said, "Just sit where you are, stranger, and rest easy. I ain't gonna be gone a second." But by your leave, I did not think that a continuation of the history of the enterprising vagabond Jim Smiley would be likely to afford me much information concerning the Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, and so I started away. At the door, I met the sociable Wheeler returning, and he buttonholed me and recommenced, "Well, this year Smiley had a yeller one-eyed cow that didn't have no tail, only just a short stump like a banana, and—" "Oh, hang Smiley and his afflicted cow," I muttered good-naturedly, and bidding the old gentleman good day, I departed. Oh, it's such a cute story. I love it. And they helped me out by having the yours and yorns and whatnots written in there phonetically. So I hope you guys like that. I know it went really fast. I can't help myself when I start getting a little bit of inflection, a little bit of dialect, a little bit of that. I love that. It's probably not entirely correct, but it's close enough. So, what'd you guys think of that one? Did you like it? I hope so. What are you guys doing for spring? I think I might be the only one left, at least of those of us that are here that have somebody in school. I think Dalton's spring break is still like a week and a half away. I'm not sure what we're going to do. I don't know. Anywho's be. Our other story tonight, as I say, is it is not a typical springy story. It's not Easter Bunny. It's not really what you would expect. It's not stuff like we did for Yule. So Friday, we'll have a couple of different names. Most calendars will say the first day of spring. Some will say Ostara, depending on how much of a lunar calendar you'll have. For all of spring. What did I say? Oh, no. For all of spring. The accent for all of spring? Oh, I'll do the accent for all of spring. Oh, I could drive you crazy. Oh, that could be bad. I have to start tailoring it closer to the Vanda. I promise I will not. I'm so sorry, babe. I will not. But yeah, so this story is, yeah. As I say, I did glance over it. I hope it gets a couple of you in your feels. But in a good way. In a good way. I'm not purposely trying to make anybody sad. But this is not a very well-known story. I just kind of found it. The author is Amanda Davison. For anybody who wants to find it, this is not my story. I just found it. So, yes. I wake up to the grating buzz of Craig's alarm. He rolls over and silences it with a heavy hand before letting sleep reclaim him. Any other morning, I would have rolled back over with him and tried to steal an extra 10 minutes of shut-eye before the alarm pierced the quiet again. But today I'm wide awake. It's the first day of spring. I marked the date in my calendar with shaking hands during the dead gray of November, when the crisp chill of fall had passed through and robbed the world of color before fading into the dreary, seemingly endless night of winter. I'd flipped through the calendar, running my hands across its clean pages, their emptiness a hint of potential that I wished I could soak in through my fingertips. But my heart was just as empty as the pages. My countdown is finally over. My pact with myself fulfilled. Today is the day. Craig stirs with a huff. Damn birds, he grumbles. I hadn't noticed the birds until he mentioned them. But now that my attention has been pulled towards them, I'm not sure how I hadn't heard their cacophony before. I'm keenly aware of the sun sneaking through the cracks in the blinds. It's rising brighter and earlier than I had through the previous months. A welcome change. The chipper chirping of birds that had been as absent as the sun is a bonus. Craig's alarm blares again. He gropes for it and turns it off before rubbing his eyes and opening them properly. You need the shower? He asks, his voice still thick with sleep. I shake my head, a nearly imperceptible movement. I took the day off. I remind him. Right. Spring. Craig sighs and hauls himself to his feet with a groan. The shower sputters to life and threatens to drown out the chirps and calls. So I close my eyes and focus on the cheery din with a smile. I'd missed the damn birds. I soak in the sounds of the world outside until Craig comes back, wrapped in a towel with beads of water threatening to give in to gravity and trail down his shoulders. He trades his towel for clothes and bustles around our apartment, collecting himself for the day. He returns to me before he leaves, kisses my forehead gently with rough lips. A quiet I love you hangs in the air between us as he looks at me for an extra moment. Have a good day, he says before walking out the door. I'm tempted to pull the covers up over my head and go back to sleep, the way I would if I had taken an impromptu Thursday off during the gray months, held in bed by the warmth of the covers and the weight of my shame and insufficiencies. But today the sun is bright and the birds are calling me outside. I shower for a luxuriously long time, savoring the hot water as it pours down my back. I take the time to lather my hair up with so much shampoo the bubbles pile comically high and hold it in place, tickling my skin as they rinse free. I let conditioner soak in as I exfoliate, giving every inch of my body a little extra love, carefully scraping away the debris of winter with gentle circles. I step from the shower, skin pink from the friction and heat, feeling fresh and fragile. I wrap myself in the fluffy towel Craig had left out for me, still warm from the dryer. It's a simple act of love, but it sparks the sharp prickle behind my eyes, and I bury my face with a smile. When I put my rings back on, my thumb plays with the familiar smooth metal bands for an extra moment. Till death do us part had felt too macabre. Instead, we vow to love each other every day we have for as long as humanly possible. The memory of Craig choking on the words before kissing my hands makes my heart ache. I close my eyes and lean into the feeling before turning my attention to the kettle. Craig had filled it and set it to boil on his way out, my teapot placed beside it with a tea bag already waiting inside. I smile at the second gift, but pass it by for a paper cup in the sun. I pull on a cozy sweater to keep me warm and reach past the thick winter jacket I usually shrug into, opting instead for a thin windbreaker. I wrap the scarf Craig bought me during our last out-of-town trip loosely around my neck and shoulders, with a sentimental warmth as much as to protect me from the cold. That first drink of spring air is crisp and invigorating. I've been able to taste it coming. The freshness of spring has been riding in on the breeze for the past week. But today, the cherry blossoms have finally fallen open, and the crocuses are starting to break free of the soil. I stop to smile at the new growth, just the tips of green stems poking out of the dirt. Not flowers yet, but they will be. Craig loves the summer months. He loves the consistent greens and reds of trees nourished by ample sunlight, beds of well-cared-for flowers cycling through whichever bloom is in season. The varieties changing, but the colored petals consistent. Summer's nice, but spring is where the magic is. It sings of hope. After months of decay, seemingly dead trees bud anew. Brown branches burst with flowers that promise leaves. Buried bulbs sprout stems that fight their way to the surface. It makes me wonder if they'd grow at all if it weren't for the obstacle the dirt provides. I marvel at their fight the same way I admire a lone dandelion growing defiantly in a sea of concrete, making do with the smallest crack it could find. Spring is the proof that life perseveres in possible conditions. Some days I need proof. I let my feet carry me to the cafe at the end of the block. I smile and nod to the people I pass. It's a simple, forgettable gesture, but I like to think it could make a small impact on the complex, challenging lives crossing paths with mine. It's impossible not to smile with the taste of spring in the air and the sun warm on my face. I order my favorite tea, a rich assam that I don't keep at home. I pay, drop some extra change in the tip jar, and banter with the barista as my cup waits its turn. Her name escapes me, but I always look forward to her bizarre thought of the day, and today she does not disappoint. Tea in hand, I consider settling into a corner booth, stripping off my layers, and enjoying my tea while people watching, but I can't sip the spring air from inside the cafe. I follow my feet to the water, zigzagging absent-mindedly down familiar streets, smiling at everything and nothing in particular until I make it to the seawall. I join the rest of the people whose lives have brought them to the same place in the same moment, strolling leisurely in the sun. I breathe in the salt air and pause to lean against a railing, closing my eyes so I can really take it all in. The gentle din of people chatting and laughing, anchored by the rhythmic of anchored by the rhythm of waves cresting and breaking against smooth rocks, holding their ground but losing the overall war. Time will make dust of us all. I make my way down the beach, slipping my feet from my sneakers and socks, placing them carefully out of the water's reach, and rolling the cuff of my jeans up carefully. I choose my steps to the water's edge. The beach here is still a sharp medley of rocks and shells. I brace myself for the cold of the water as I step into the ocean. The cold is unforgiving, and I feel as if a fist has grabbed hold of my heart and lungs, even though the water is only barely touching my ankles. I savor the sensation of the moment, warmth escaping my feet until they're pins and needles, and wind water lapping playfully at my calves, hands warmed by the delicious tea I'm sipping to replace the heat I'm losing by the second. Some days I've looked at the ocean and thought about just walking until the waves are far overhead. My feet lose the ocean floor and it's hard to tell which way is up. On the days when everything is overwhelming and too much, that closed and muffled silence I can only find by holding my head under water is peaceful and welcoming, and it beckons me. But not today. The realization makes my eyes sting again, a constriction in my chest that threatens to well up and spill over, but I swallow it down and dab the corners of my eyes with the soft folds of my scarf. I pick up a small, round, time-worn pebble. It's dark gray and glistening from where the water has kissed it before receding away, promising to come back. I rub gentle circles over its smooth surface with my thumb. If I rub small circles into it for the rest of my life, could I leave a mark on it the way the ocean would? Yes. I slip it into my pocket, still circling my thumb against it, determined to try. I finish the last sip of my tea, take one more deep breath, letting the sounds of the gulls crying overhead, kids laughing further down the beach, dogs barking in the distance, all wash over me with the waves, lapping their consistent, reliable rhythm before I retreat from the ocean to slip dry socks back over my damp, cold-stung feet. I fluff my scarf up to protect my face against a particularly cold gust and head for the warmth of home. I pass the rest of the afternoon next to a sunny window, cracked open to let fresh air in, buried in blankets with a book in one hand and my pot of tea within reach of the other. I look up from the book often, allowing myself to be distracted by the moment and appreciating the sunshine. Craig's keys clink gently as he turns the lock and lets himself into our apartment. He's carrying a small white orchid in full bloom, its flowers cascading gently toward the edge of its pot. "Funny seeing you here," he jokes as he shuts the door gently behind him. His smile is loose and wide. There's a little bit of tension in the corners of his grin, a raw relief in his eyes that betray him. He lets me take the orchid, giving me a moment to dip my face to the thin petals and breathe in their faint perfume and place them on the dining room table before he wraps his arms around me and pulls me close. Thank you for still being here, he whispers into my hair. He kisses the top of my head and holds me tight. The gentle pound of his heart in his chest is as soothing, constant, and reliable as the ocean. I love you. I love you too, I whisper back. Every day we have, for as long as humanly possible, I promise. I let my tears fall freely this time. All the emotion I've held onto, pushed down and buried deep in my chest, bursts forth and blooms across Craig's button down. He just holds me tighter and waits out the storm. When my shoulders stop shaking and my sobs run dry, Craig pets my hair soothingly. Promise me you'll wait until the first day of spring again next year? He asks. I nod. And I promise it to him and to myself that I'll mark next year's first day of spring again in the dead of winter when fighting through is hardest. I'll mark the light at the end of the tunnel, the day with the proof. I just have to make it to the first day of spring. Oh, I should have read that further. I am so sorry, guys. Wow, yes, just a little skim over that. I was like, oh, that's a nice little story. And then he just holds her at the end. Oh. Whew. I've got some folks going through it, and I've just been feeling it for them, and I think that's what this is. And I'm really sorry, guys. Okay. I'm really sorry that was like such a whatever. Or maybe I'm reading more into that story than is there. Oh. So. It's a short one tonight because in my head all day today, I've tried to remind myself of stuff. Been like, just remember. And then I'm one of those folks that most everything will turn into a song lyric in your head. It's fine. So I've heard just remember, which leads to just remember I love you. It'll be all right. So that's what we're going to do. Just remember that I love you. It'll be all right. I'm going to go take care of whatever this was. But let's do the spiel because it's YouTube and we have to. Please like, share, subscribe. Not necessarily in that order, but if you could do all of the things, that would be fantastic. I will see you on the second channel tomorrow night. Let's overreact or talk about other people overreacting because I am certain that's what this is. Good golly gosh. Yeah, I think that's the dadism. Good golly gosh. But anyway, I gotta go wash this sweater now. I didn't think it was gonna get me like that. So, and I don't have any tissues or handkerchiefs or anything. So I'm gonna go wash my sweater, wash my face. I love you guys. I will see you very, very soon. Please be kind to each other. Please do some reaching out. I reached out to a few people today just to try to figure out what's happening. But please reach out to the people that you love and tell them that you love them before you go to bed tonight. Bye, guys.